Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Rise Above Justice Movement podcast. My name is Zachary Mallory, and I am the founder and the host of the Rise Above Justice Movement and the Rise Above Justice Movement, the podcast. Today, I'll give a viewer discretion is advised due to the nature of the topics that we will be discussing. All right, it's been a while. It's been a very long while since I've done an episode. you know, Life just continues to throw things at me. But to kickstart like our new episode series about police brutality and about movement building and kind of talking to organizers on the ground and that are literally facing what is happening right now. Today I am joined by two organizers with families demanding justice. Welcome to the podcast, y'all. I'm so excited to sit down and talk with you. Feel free to introduce yourselves and give us a background on what got you into doing this work specifically.
Hi, my name is Charlotta Pritchett, and on January 3rd of 2025, my partner of 7 years, Timothy Glaze, was experiencing a mental health crisis, and I called 911 to help me de-escalate the situation. And shortly after they arrived, they had shot Timothy 16 times. Timothy was 58 years old. He had prostate cancer, colon cancer, and stage 4 liver cancer. He was 6'1", weighing only 137 pounds. Literally, he was already dying. And they shot him 16 times for no reason. And they smiled after they handcuffed his dead corpse. And 3 days later, an organization, Dare to Struggle, came to my apartment to see if I wanted help fighting for justice, which I did. I had never experienced anything like this before. It was very traumatic. And I joined them, and shortly after, I became a leader in the Families Demanding Justice to reach out to other families that are experiencing the same thing that I experienced, the same pain, the same trauma. And since that time, I've been in the streets, I've been on Zoom, I've been everywhere trying to reach out to people to join this movement. And I call it the George Floyd movement because that movement, so many people came out, therefore something had to be done. And if we can get that kind of movement on a regular basis, then some of these killer cops can start paying for their crimes. And that's the reason why I wanted to join and do everything that I can to make a difference.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and I'm Quinn. I'm a member of Dare to Struggle Chicago, and I'm an organizer with Families Demanding Justice. To kind of just explain both of those things. So, Dare to Struggle is an activist organization with chapters across the country. We basically, I mean, our motto is to like bring people forward to fight back against the American nightmare, and like the American nightmare can be lots of different things to people. It could be dilapidated housing. It could be, ICE terror in the streets. It could be, the conditions for inmates and their families in the prisons and jails. And like we organize around all those things, including like police brutality. That's been like one of the like main pillars of our work since like Dare to Struggle was formed. And more than a year ago, different chapters have been forming. We had really made an effort to in the struggle against police brutality and like how we approach it. We've made this effort of like we really want to connect with families who have been impacted by like police brutality, who have lost loved ones at the hands of police. And so we, had a number of families in different chapters who we were connected to, who were fighting for justice for their loved ones, principally to like get those cops who killed their loved ones like locked up and thrown in jail. It was actually after we started doing 022, which is October 22nd, the National Day Against Police Brutality. On October 22nd, we initiated doing that as an organization to kind of revive that day. It was actually after we did that in 2024, we sat down and we said, look, like we have all these families from New York to LA to like everywhere in between where our chapters exist. Like, let's like bring families together in a more concrete way. And so we spoke with families and we formed Families Demanding Justice as like a national network for families who have gone through this very similar experience. Um, and to kind of put that in a nutshell, I mean, Families Demanding Justice is, a network of like support to like, you know, give people a place to like grieve and to like understand this fucking trauma that they've been dealing with. Um, it's a place to like share like information and resources with different people who have been through this struggle. So families who've been, fighting for a decade can give like guidance and mentorship to like people who are like literally just going through this and don't know what to do, where to go, how to fight to get justice for their loved ones. And I think primarily it's to try to rebuild a national movement against police brutality, one that like really sees the families as a center of gravity, as like important leaders in this struggle. Because just from my experience of working with families, it's like these are the least compromising people in this struggle. They want justice because it's very personal. So it's, the struggle for justice and against police brutality isn't a springboard to, get into political office or to get a bunch of grant money. It's very personal. And so like that's like an uncompromising feeling that we feel like needs to be the center of like rebuilding this movement against police brutality. So that's kind of like what Families Demanding Justice is and like seeks to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you both for being here. And, obviously, this is not an easy subject to talk about, especially whenever it directly impacts us, right? This is something that is very near and dear to myself. And I know my co-founders also deeply appreciate you being here as well. Charlotta, I remember reading an article about Timothy. It's a January 6, 2025 article from CBS News. And I remember reading this, and that's why I'm kind of familiar with like what happened to Timothy, and it's so deeply devastating. And that's not even like literally a scratch on the surface about what you feel and how the family feels and how community members feel. But one thing that I wanted to kind of point out a little bit, and this isn't the first instance of police brutality with Chicago. This is nothing new. This is
No.
nothing new. So what are you hearing being on the ground? What are you hearing community members saying about the work that you all are doing? And what are you seeing as far as like organizing goes? Like what are you hearing on the ground? What are you seeing?
Well, I'm hearing that a lot of people are tired of the police brutality and the excessive force they use with people and the way they handle mental health issues, and they want to get involved, and they just need to know how to get involved. They need to know what to do, and that's one of the reasons I'm working so closely with Quinn to try to organize a mass movement with people so that when this happens, instead of us reading about it or hearing it or seeing it on TV, come out and do something. And the more of us that come out, the more people, the more power. And that's what I'm hearing. And a lot of people are really encouraging me to continue with the fight. Family members of mine are very proud that I haven't just given up, but I can't give up. I mean, if I give up, he died for nothing. I can't just let him just be gone and no justice. So it's already been a year with no justice, and I'm not going to quit. I need to keep going. And with the help of Quinn, Families Demanding Justice, the organization, the organizing of a mass movement, it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just if I could add to like I think a couple of things. Like one thing that we say a lot, both in like Families Demanding Justice and in Dare to Struggle, is we'd say like go to the masses, go to the masses, go to the masses. That's kind of like our mantra. And like basically whenever stuff like this happens, whenever the police kill somebody or a fucking like really egregious act of injustice is like brought to light in some way, or we get wind of it, like we like primarily like go out to try to talk to people who are affected by this stuff. And like so we when Timothy was killed, We went on like trains. We went to the west side, went to the south side, and we've been doing that for weeks and months of like going on like talking to people about like Timothy's story. So I think one thing that we know is that like you might get a couple seconds in the sun with the media, like the media will shine light on this for maybe maybe a few days, but then like once the news cycle kicks in again, these stories get buried. So like people, we talked to a lot of people who are like surprised to hear about it. We also talked to a lot of people who are familiar with the case, but people were like, "Oh, whoa, I didn't even hear about this." Um, you know, so like that's kind of part of it is kind of like trying to keep these stories alive and like let people know that like not only was this person killed, but these cops are still on the fucking street. They're still getting a paycheck and they could kill again. Like they're not being held accountable. So what's stopping them from like, getting the green light to do it again? Um, and so, yeah, that's kind of like, I think a big piece of like what we do. And, um, you know, uh, just to add to Charlotta's point too, it's like I think people are really fucking sick and tired of this shit, and we hear about different instances of police brutality all the time, but I think there's this also the sense of defeat and demoralization and fear. Like people, you know, uh, feel like they can't do anything about it, or that like they're unwilling to in some ways because maybe those fucking cops, if we do a protest and we roll up to the police precinct and that's your neighborhood, maybe those cops are going to come fuck with you, and so like there's a lot of fear that we have to like fight through. And I think that what we're saying is like it really takes like masses of people to actually kind of build that kind of support and structure, and to kind of get people like past that fear. It takes like a mass movement to like actually give people the confidence to you know fight back against their enemies. And so that's like a big hurdle we have to like kind of overcome.
Yeah. And whenever I think of Chicago police, I think of Fred Hampton being murdered on December 4th, 1969 by Chicago PD and FBI agents. I think about Fred Hampton, what he would be doing now. And then I look at Fred Hampton Jr., who is still active, who is still carrying on the legacy of his father. And speaking of like mental health, right? I think back last year, there was a 17-year-old child who was nonverbal. He was autistic with
Mhm.
cerebral palsy in Pocatello, Idaho, that was shot and killed by police. What fucking threat is a 17-year-old nonverbal autistic child with cerebral palsy whenever you are a police officer that has a taser and a firearm? What threat is a 17-year-old child to you? This case fucked me up for a lot of different reasons. As somebody who is also autistic, as somebody who struggles with mental health on a daily basis, someone who is a survivor of sexual and gender-based violence, I cannot imagine what was running through his mind. I cannot imagine what was running through Timothy's mind. I can't imagine what's running through Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. And there's so many of these names. And it just continues going because, like you said, a key thing, when there's no accountability. There's literally nothing. A police officer can shoot and kill somebody. They get fired from that department. They can go over to the next city, become a police officer, and do it again. But there's no accountability. There's no registry, right? There's nothing. There's no accountability. And God forbid the quote unquote Department of Justice actually do their damn job, because obviously this is the system working exactly how it was designed. Oftentimes we hear a system is broken, a system is broken. Y'all, you don't understand the deep roots of this and where it truly comes from. It was built to harm marginalized communities. It was built to criminalize people that don't need to be criminalized. But yet you had somebody like Jeffrey Epstein, who was a serial trafficker, that would continue to walk around the streets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
But then you have somebody who has a simple marijuana charge that does more time than a serial trafficker. This is not a system broken. This is exactly how the system was designed. It protected him and penalized everybody else. And now, dealing with those unanswered questions, Charlotta, I'm sure you have a lot of questions that you want to ask. So I want to jump in if you're comfortable with it and kind of talk about like you interacting with Chicago police, demanding that pursuit of justice. Obviously, you said like a year, no justice, and I have a thing, no justice, no peace. Prosecute the police. It's not just a chant. It's seriously something that we need to do, and justice looks different. What are some of those questions that you have for them? And I know there's a ton of them, but what are some of those questions that remain unanswered for you in regards to Timothy or in regards to anything else that you've had experience with Chicago PD?
My main question is how can officers kill someone
Mhm.
and go free?
And can I add to that really quick?
Yeah.
How can they shoot and kill somebody and go home to their own family,
Yeah.
knowing what they just did? Their families and their children are going to see that on the news. Maybe you said a key thing also, Quinn, about the news media because they're bought and paid for. Mainstream media is functioning exactly how it was created too. But thank you for that. Thank you for that point. But sorry, I did not mean to cut you off. I just wanted to
No,
add
that's
that
fine.
part in there because yes, yes. Continue.
They go home, they sit down, they eat dinner with their family, laugh, whatever. They go to sleep, and they sleep well or whatever. You get up the next day, okay, let me put my stuff on. Maybe I'll kill somebody today. I don't understand that. I don't understand that. How? How can you do that? How can you walk around? For instance, Alejandro Urbano Mateo is the officer that handcuffed Timothy's dead body, and then he stood up and he smiled in a camera. What are you smiling for? I don't understand that. What's funny? Or do they teach at the academy to smile after the kill? I don't get it. And I don't get how you can be a human being and execute someone like that, be it George Floyd, Timothy Glaze, Laquan McDonald, and continue to do it day after day after day with no reservations, no remorse, no feeling, and you have this blank look on your face like it's okay. It's not okay. Those are questions that I have that bother me. And sometimes when I'm up thinking about it, the insomnia kicks in. I can't go to sleep. I'm steady thinking, how in the world are they still free? And you can't even justify shooting him 16 times because if you could, the case wouldn't still be open. So why is the case still open over 15 months later? Those are questions that go through my mind over and over again. Copel wants to cover for you. Brandon Johnson, our mayor, doesn't want to address it. He doesn't want to talk to me. I've tried talking to him several times, and yet he just looks at me with this blank look. I'm confused. You're the mayor, and the CPD works for you. Mm-hmm. So why can't you answer any of my questions? Why can't you have those gentlemen taken off the phone? Why can't you have them charged with the murder of Timothy Glaze?
He hasn't even said the name Timothy Glaze, let alone like address police brutality in the city. But just wanted to throw that in there too. Like, why haven't you said anything about Timothy Glaze? The point about Brandon Johnson too is another question. I think is a really important question, like central to this conference that we're hosting too. We'll talk about later, but it's like, this is a mayor who is positioned as a progressive, backed by the biggest union in the country, CTU, ran, post 2020 on holding police accountable, said he's going to rein in these police, hold them accountable, whatever that means, right? That's very abstract. Gets into this position of power, and police are killing people in the streets, like, and nothing's happening to them, and not only that, but he has nothing to say to these families, about any, like, the names of these victims. Police have not only like kept their jobs, but like have even gotten awards after killing people. Like a young man this last May, a family that we work with, Nate Barron, he's 19 years old. He was shot 3 times execution style by a police who was pinned him against the back, like had him on his belly with his knee on his back. And then, 5 months later, this officer gets an award by CPD of like honor and valor for this act. And it's like the progressive mayor, with all his rhetoric, has nothing to say about any of this. And I think that's my question is like, why? You know, like why is this happening? Why are we in this position where this person is, able to position himself as, a man of the people and yet is selling people down the river?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it makes you wonder, like, where the campaign donations are coming in and like who they're coming from. We see a lot of APAC influence. We see a lot of number of different of these PACs, and oh my God, we need to get money out of politics. Is a big thing, but I'm really excited, to kind of dive in and kind of shift gears here a little bit and talk about the work that you're doing now. So you have a conference coming up, and I believe it in May, right? Um,
April.
I knew it was sometime. I have a lot of dates running around in my head, but you guys have a conference coming up here really soon. So walk us through like what that conference is going to look like. Have you done this before? What are you expecting? And just kind of like give like an overview and how people can attend, or how they can contribute. Just walk us through like what you're doing now.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll give a brief overview and then Charlotte can jump in. So yeah, we're hosting our first Families Demanding Justice conference, April 24th through the 26th here in Chicago. The title of the conference is Rebuild the Movement Against Police Brutality and Against the Grifters. And I guess like, I can explain this in like a couple of different ways. Just like about a month ago, a young man in Grand Rapids, Michigan, was shot execution style by a police officer. It was caught on cell phone camera. They had a K9 unit who was like tearing into this man while he like laid on his stomach and was shot in the back of the head. And this was like caught on cell phone video. They had the body camera they released the same day too, but the cell phone camera is like probably the best image of seeing exactly what happened to this man, Daquan Johnson. And, after seeing that video, it's like Grand Rapids, Michigan should have been on fucking fire. It should have been up in flames. Cities across this country should have been up in flames. But it wasn't. It didn't have that effect. And sadly, like time moved forward and the news cycle moved forward. And I think that that's kind of the central issue that we're trying to deal with is like, unfortunately, the movement against police brutality, the militant, robust mass movement that was trying to put police in check is nowhere to be found. And it's up to people who want to see an end to police brutality, particularly families and victims of police brutality, to get serious about trying to figure out what will it take to rebuild this movement that will respond accordingly when police kill people across this country. Police this last year in 2025 killed more than 13,000 people. It was less, I think 60 less than the year before, but for the last consecutive like 3 years, it's gone up by about 100. So it's this increasing trend, and since 2020, about 8,000 people have been killed by police around the country, and so we're not seeing an end to this. It's actually getting worse and it's increasing, and so we think that it's time to like really sit down and have critical conversations about what will it actually take to rebuild this movement. And kind of part of our, the subtext of this conference is also being like against the grifters. So it's against police brutality, but also against the grifters. So who are the political forces in our country who have, sold out this movement, who have basically got in front of the ship and steered it down and crashed it? Who are the politicians? Who are the NGOs? Who are the lawyers who have taken advantage of people and taken these fights for justice and the movement of police brutality into the ground? And I think that that's a second really critical and important part of this is to kind of go through some of these kinds of have some of these conversations of like, what are we fighting for, and how do we discern who's like a friend of this movement and who is not, and what are the politics that they're trying to put forward to like like move this movement in a certain direction. So basically, the conference is a weekend of workshops, roundtables, panels that are going to be covering all of these kinds of questions. There's going to be panels about lawyers, about like the sort of like the way that lawyers direct families' fights into lawsuits, into purely, monetary gains and dissuade them from fights for justice. There's going to be conversations about sort of like what has happened since 2020 and why are we in this position we are in now today. There's going to be panels about ICE and police brutality and like how are they connected, how are they different, and why we need to have like a movement that's like combating both forms of state violence. And then we're going to have, kind of like after hour hangouts, kind of like where people can relax and be social. And then we'll round off the weekend on a Sunday with doing like a memorial for all the stolen lives present. Because a big part of this conference is actually going to be impacted families. We're connected to and we're raising money to make sure we can try to fly out and house as many impacted families as possible from around the country to come to Chicago and to be with one another and to be a part of these conversations. Because like we mentioned earlier, like we think that's like a really important part. But it's not exclusively for impacted families. It's also for activists, for progressive people, for people who are like interested in this conversation and want to be a part of it. Like everyone is invited to participate, and we really hope that like people can come out and be a part of this with us. We hope that like by the end of the weekend we can kind of come to some points of unity to figure out, okay, what can we actually take from this and go forward and to like go out and really try to rebuild this movement. That's kind of it in a nutshell. I don't know if you have
pretty much.
Yeah.
Well, he pretty much covered it. That's the purpose. I'm excited. I mean, it's my first time being an organizer. I mean, like I said, I've heard about things like this before. You see them on the news, but it totally takes a different turn when it comes to your front door. And Timothy was murdered right outside my front door. There's actually 10 bullet holes on the floor in the hallway where he died. And my only wish at the time was to get to a different apartment, to a different floor, so I wouldn't have to walk over the crime scene every day. Yet I was forced to stay in that apartment for 5 months. And the daily trauma of walking over that spot, thinking of him taking his last breath there, it makes a big difference. When you hear about it on TV, you feel so bad for the family, you hate what the cops did, and pretty soon, just like the news media, you go on with your life and you go back to whatever is normal. But when it comes to your front door, you can't go back to what's normal because there is no normal. There's no norm. I mean, Timothy and I were together for 7 years. We went everywhere together. It took me almost a year to ride a CTA public transportation bus by myself because Timothy was always with me, and I couldn't do it. It took me. I can do it now. I'm getting there, but it took me about a year to be able to go out in public alone. I was terrified. I was terrified to see a police car, so it makes a big difference. And that's one of the reasons why I want as many people that can come, as many people that want to see a difference happen, to come to this conference. And so we can talk about what we can do as a huge organization, as a huge mass of people to make change come.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for sharing about this conference. It sounds like it's going to be an exciting time. I would absolutely attend, but it's very difficult with a mother going through cancer, it is very difficult to kind of get everything together that I need to attend that. But um, this conversation has been very needed, and these are the conversations that we need to continue having. And I think this conference is going to be an eye-opening moment for people, I've always found it to be easier to talk to people who just get it and people who just understand. While the experiences are different of each person and each family that has experienced this, there's one common thing. They were fucked over by the system.
Yeah.
The system that is supposed to protect took their loved ones. No accountability, no justice. There are people that are still waiting for justice. Their loved one was shot and killed back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, etc. They're still waiting on justice. And they're still waiting, but it's one of those things, and I struggle with thinking about justice. And I created the Rise Above Justice movement because whenever we think about justice, it's not linear. It's complex because it looks different for every single family and every single person. So what may look like justice to me may not be something to you, or vice versa, but it's all the same system.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
ICE. I've been watching what's going on in Chicago with ICE and in Minnesota and here in Kansas City and, in New York. And like I have connections like all across the country and watching the ICE terror go on. And a lot of the local departments have the 287G contract, which, they're contracted and it's a partnership with DHS, Department of Homeland Security. It's still a part of that same system. They're not police, but they're trained as such. They're trained. Oh God, I can pop off on this, and I don't. I know neither one of you want to hear that, but there's a lot that we can say about this. But again, it's all in the same system, and it's all tied in, directly connected, and harming marginalized communities, shooting American citizens. It's all the same system.
Mm-hmm.
But, again, thank you both for coming on the podcast. I greatly appreciate both of you. Is there anything else that you wanted to share? How can people like donate to your organization, or how can people follow you on social media? How can people uplift the work that you all are doing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can, if you want to come out to the conference, you can register on our website, familiesdemandingjustice.org. You can also donate at the GoFundMe that's also linked on that website. There's a registration page. Just click that and you'll find the place where you can put your name and your number to register for the conference as well as the GoFundMe. You can check us out on Instagram at Families Demanding Justice. You can check us out on Facebook at Families Demanding Justice. You can also check out Dare to Struggle, daretostruggle.org, at Dare to Struggle National on Instagram. We see the fight against police brutality as like a central way that the system oppresses people in this country, Black and oppressed people in particular. But like the system, it's a system. There's many different ways that this people experience the American nightmare, and like the way like we try to like step to people to like confront that nightmare, like very much what Dare to Struggle is trying to do across the board in different ways. So if you want to support our work, you could find donation links on the website and stuff like that. But definitely come out to the conference, and yeah, that's about it. Do you have anything you want to share?
No, I'm just excited. The more people come to the conference, the more people I'll get to meet.
Charlotta, you remind me a lot of myself. You're very bubbly. You're very, oh, gosh. I want to give you like the biggest hug right now. So I'm giving you air hugs because, um, you know, I'm getting emotional because again, these are the conversations that we need to continue having. You all have an open invite, and if any of your other members or families that you all work with would like to share their story, our movement is here to amplify those voices because the mainstream media is not going to do it. We will. I'm not, and I'm going to let you know this, and anybody out there who's listening, I'm not backed by any corporation. I'm not backed by a billionaire. I'm a volunteer. I do not get paid for this, but I do it because I give a damn. Because
Exactly.
I've been impacted by the systems. My black and brown family members have been impacted by the systems. My partner is a transgender woman that grew up in a rural area in southeast Kansas. She's been fucked over by these systems. Like, we see it. We see it on a daily basis. It's not just headlines, it's our reality. Again, thank you both for coming on the podcast. Please take care of yourselves and continue doing the badass work that you're doing. I think it is making a huge difference. It's leaving those rippling effects because if we don't do it, it's not going to get done.
That's right.
That's right.
All right.
Thank you.
Howard, thank you all so much.
Thank you.